Welcome to Eating Scripture. I'm your host, Drew Downs. This week's gospel is for Proper 19b. That's Mark 8:27-38. And this is that story, that familiar story in which Jesus asked the disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they give him responses, prophets, John the Baptist, Elijah. Right? And then Jesus twists it a little bit and says, "Who do you say that I am?" Which is a great turn on this. And Peter speaks up, says to Jesus that he's the Messiah, and then Jesus shuts him up. Well, the story shifts here, and Jesus starts talking about what's about to happen, the coming death, right? And Peter rebukes Jesus for saying he's about to die. And then Jesus rebukes Peter for speaking for Satan. Oh, this is a great story. I love it. Seriously, one of my favorites. And where I always start with this is with what my seminary professor, Dr. Dan Smith, pointed out, that this is that halfway point in the Gospel of Mark, and it serves as the serious turning point. See, before this moment, Jesus was focused on building the ministry and on teaching the disciples. And here, he sets his eyes on Jerusalem. He physically turns to Jerusalem and sets his sights on it. And the passage even has this element of physical turning, right? As Jesus physically turns and puts Peter back in line behind him. So this is that point in which the ministry gets real. And we sense this, of course, because there's that part at the end, that foreboding of taking up our cross and following Jesus. So we know that things have gotten serious. And we take that as a very serious message. For me, the most honest response to this text is to deal with that very idea. That as followers of Jesus, we get a turning point. That there's this thing we get. Right? And it's a point in which it stops being about learning by itself and turns into living a certain way. And I don't mean that typical, we need to learn how to poop or get off the pot idea. I mean that following Jesus is about starting with learning and then adds doing to it. The problem is that for many of us, we stopped learning a long time ago, back when we got confirmed, or when we quit church, or when we went off to college, or when we had that one pastor who taught us that one thing we didn't like, right? Anything like that. So for many of us, we don't feel as if we've actually reached that halfway point in which we can add the doing. We need to keep learning. And I'd argue that for many, this is probably true. There are many people, many years older than I am, that still need to keep learning. But the bigger issue is that Jesus is talking about our doing a hard thing. And it's fair to say that Jesus thinks we're ready. We're ready to follow him that way. Stop heading this way, and that we're now going this way. And we've just got to do it. And I think that's the good news, that Jesus believes in us to fulfill this mission, and that we're ready to take over. That Jesus has faith in us. For more, check out my site, drewdowns.net. So go munch on it, proclaim it. Peace.